This is the Zhiyun Weebill 2. If you know me, you'll know I've been a massive fan of the Weebill series. I had the original Weebill Lab and I've been using the Weebill S daily for almost 2 years now. This is the latest version and I was buzzing to get hold of it. But I think Zhiyun have kind of missed the mark and I don't think I'll be using this gimbal regularly. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and in case you're new here, my name is Chris Spice and I make videos on filmmaking on the go, whether that's big professional cameras like the A7S III or small cameras like the Osmo Pocket. I do this using gear reviews, tutorials and vlogs, so if you're interested in that sort of stuff, hit that subscribe button down below and let's get into it. Well, firstly then, who do I think this gimbal is for? Why did they release a number 2 when they already had the Weebill S? Well, I think this is actually aimed at fans of the Weebill design who want something that holds a little bit more weight. I still find when I'm using the Weebill S and I'm doing close-up shots with the gimbal, it can be a little bit wobbly at times, and that is noticeable, especially with heavier setups. And for people who are new to the Weebill series, the whole series is designed to be compact, to fit in your bag and to be perfect for travel. At least that was the original idea. And one of the best things about a Weebill lineup for me is the fact it's got such a unique design. It doesn't just come straight down like a handle, there's actually this bit coming off the back here, and it includes a tripod thread here. So if you attach a mini tripod to it, you can actually get in underslung mode really easily. And I'm a massive fan of this. So if you're new to the Weebill lineup, that's one of the biggest advantages in my opinion. Okay, so let's start with the facts and the things that you've seen in gimbals before, but still worth a mention. So we've still got those lever locks up here from the Weebill S, which is good for sort of tightening and loosening the plate up here, which again is a Manfrotto capable plate. Then you've got the locks for the axis here, so you can lock each individual axis while you're balancing. Obviously that's really handy. Then you've got the trigger at the back, of course, and analog stick at the front, and then a little lever here to change between the different modes, pan lock and pan follow. We'll get into that in a minute because that doesn't actually work the way you think it does. So with that out of the way, let's get to some of the positive changes they've made to this gimbal, starting with the motors. Now obviously with the Weebill S and the Weebill Lab, the focus was on being compact, small and great for travel, but because of that you did have to sacrifice some of the motor strength. That meant that some gimbals like the Ronin S and the Crane 2 always had the upper hand in terms of the motor strength, but I feel like with the Weebill 2 they've really caught up. The newest motors are clearly stronger, it just feels sturdier, the movements feel better, and it doesn't wobble as much when you're doing precise movements or you've balanced it a tiny bit wrong, for example. Often happens at weddings when you're in a rush, you just need to get balanced and get going straight away. I feel like they've also made the arms a bit bigger, so you can balance front heavier setups a bit more, and obviously because those motors are a little bit stronger, front heavier setups aren't a problem for this gimbal. Whereas on the Weebill S, the Sony A7S III and the Sigma 24-70 doesn't balance perfectly on that gimbal, it does on the Weebill 2. Now onto the thing that all YouTubers have been raving about, it's this, the flip out touchscreen. To be fair, the touchscreen is very responsive and it does make it easier to change settings and check things at a glance. It's a nice touch and it is a little bit better than using the old screens on the Weebill Lab and the Weebill S. And that brings me nicely to the negatives of this gimbal. Now at the beginning of this video you might have heard me say that I don't recommend this gimbal, and these negatives will explain why. And starting again with that screen. At the end of the day, the screen is just a gimmick in my opinion. It's not necessarily needed, it adds extra bulk, and I don't see what was wrong with the old formula of just having the tiny little screen on the middle of the Weebill S. And yeah, you can connect your camera up to the screen, use it as a feed, and I think there's some tracking features involved in there somewhere as well. But 99% of the people who were using Weebill gimbals before won't have been using those features anyway. It's also just one extra step every time you're setting up your gimbal or you want to change settings, you have to fold out that screen, and I'd rather just not have that there. Now let's get onto the weight and size, and this thing is bulky. Part of the joy of the Weebill series was that it was small, it was lightweight and perfect for travel. That has gone out the window with this gimbal. The Weebill 2 is actually not that much smaller now than full-size gimbals like the DJI RS2. It's much heavier than the Weebill S, with the Weebill S coming in at 2 pounds or 1 kilo if you round it, and the Weebill 2 coming in at 3 pounds or 1.5 kilos, again rounded up. So that's a 50% increase, which is a huge increase in weight, especially for a range of gimbals that's designed for being great for travel. This extra weight is something that you'll feel on a full day of shooting, and yeah, you can just hit the gym or whatever, but at the end of the day, I like to keep my things lightweight and travel friendly, and this just is not that. Now onto the controls. They've all been moved around, it looks great, but they're just in the wrong place if you're not right-handed. This gimbal is heavily right-handed based, especially for the analog stick. The stick is impossible to use if you carry the gimbal with your left hand. The pan follow, lock and follow buttons are still there, but unfortunately there's nothing for POV mode anymore, which I use a lot for dance shots. Interestingly enough as well, you also have to reset the pan, follow and lock switch every time you turn the gimbal off and on. Why? Let's talk quickly about the pan smoothness. Now out of the box this thing is quite jerky. It's either going full speed left or right, or it's just steady. You can adjust the settings, but for me none of them seem to actually do anything. I was adjusting the deadband, the smoothness, the speed, and none of it was changing anything about the gimbal whatsoever. It was so frustrating on a wedding day trying to dial in the settings that I wanted to get those smooth shots, and for some reason it just wasn't responding to any of the changes I was making on that touchscreen. I'm definitely finding at the moment that the Weebill S was smoother in that pan motion, or smoother from going from still to panning. And finally, vibration problems. Now, I've had a ton of experience balancing gimbals. I've had one pretty much since day one of my video career, and I balanced them pretty much in a couple of minutes at a wedding. So I was actually surprised when I started balancing this gimbal. I thought it was balanced correctly, but it gave me this horrible vibrating noise. For some reason, sometimes when I go up to a high motor strength, it does that vibrating, even when the camera is perfectly balanced. And so with heavier lenses, I still have to go to a low motor strength, which kind of defeats the point in the motors being stronger in the first place. Even when I'm doing auto calibration, it calibrates and then it decides it doesn't want to play and does the vibration again. Again, this kind of defeats the point in the motors being stronger, but I'm hoping this is something that can be fixed with firmware down the line. Overall though, there's no denying those motors work really well when they work, and I was able to get some great stable footage from it. Finally, the battery life. On the old Weebill gimbals, the battery would easily last me a day of shooting, maybe even 2 at a push. But what's even better is the batteries are removable, so if they did run out I could just replace them quite easily on the day. For some reason on the Weebill 2, they've decided not to make the batteries removable, so now we have this built-in battery that we have to charge by USB-C, and it's not that great either. I have seen reviews that say this won't last a full day of shooting. It did actually last me a full day of shooting, but it was a bit touch and go with the battery towards the end. So I'd be a bit worried that with an intense day, this thing wouldn't last. And it's not like you can just replace the batteries like you can in the Weebill S. Now over to the important question, should you actually buy this? And for me, I think the answer is no. I think this gimbal has really lost the joy of the Weebill range. It's heavier, it's bulkier, the controls are in the wrong place, and there's definitely some software issues to be ironed out. For me, I'm balancing small cameras like the A7S III and Tamron lenses, every now and then the Sigma 24-70, but I'd much rather use the Weebill S for stuff like that. But if you are trying to balance an R5 or an R6, for example, with one of the heavy RF lenses, until now I don't think you've really had an option with the Weebill range, and I think this does cover that with the stronger motors. But at the same time, with the dodgy button placement, vibration issues with the software, and obviously not so great battery life, I think I'd still recommend going with another gimbal like the Crane 2S or the DJI RS2 if you can afford it. That's it from me. I've been Chris Spice. If you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up. If you've got any questions, leave them down below in the comments. And obviously, if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.